For the first time since the beginning of the war, the IDF confirmed that the Israeli Navy attacked the Iranian-backed Houthis at the Hodeidah port in Yemen. The IDF said the strikes were conducted in response to repeated missile and UAV attacks on Israeli territory, and said that Hodeidah port is being used to transfer weapons and to exploit civilian infrastructure in order to advance terrorist activities. Ahead of the strike, the IDF issued advanced warnings to the population in the area in order to mitigate the risk of harm to civilians. Defense Minister Israel Katz congratulated the Navy on the successful strike and warned that Israel's long arm in the air and at sea will reach anywhere. He added that Israel had previously warned the Houthis they would face a powerful response and be subjected to a maritime and air blockade should they continue attacking Israel. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Monday evening. At the top of the agenda, the Islamic Republic of Iran and the ongoing nuclear talks between Washington and Tehran. The details in the following report. United States President Donald Trump confirmed that he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a call Monday evening to discuss the Islamic Republic of Iran.
We discussed a lot of things, and it went very well. Very smooth. We'll see what happens. You know, we're trying to do something with a country we just spoke about, Iran.
Trump reiterated his desire for a diplomatic agreement to curtail the Iranian nuclear program and said the Iranians were great negotiators.
They are good negotiators, but they're tough. Sometimes they can be too tough. That's the problem. So we're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death. And we've told them that, and I've told them that, and I hope that's the way it works out, but it might not work out that way. We'll soon find out.
The president added that the United States will wait until Thursday when a meeting between the two sides is expected to take place. When asked by a reporter what the main impediment to a deal was, Trump said the following.
They're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, you know, it's just not acceptable.
Regarding Gaza, President Trump said that Iran is involved in the hostage negotiations, adding that he wants to see the return of the hostages, but that was all he could say on the topic. Trump's comment came as a surprise amid the ongoing efforts to broker a deal with Hamas for the remaining 55 hostages. The Prime Minister's office put out a brief statement saying the leaders discussed Washington's ongoing nuclear talks with Tehran. According to the PMO, Trump told Netanyahu that the U.S. has presented a reasonable proposal to Iran and is expected to receive its response in the coming days. The statement added that Israel was informed that another round of talks with Iran will be held over the weekend. Following the conversation, Prime Minister Netanyahu convened a security meeting with the participation of Defense Minister Israel Katz, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, as well as senior security officials from the IDF, Mossad, and Shin Bet. And joining us now with more on the Iranian threat and the ongoing nuclear talks between Washington and Tehran is our very own ILTV News anchor and executive board member at the Institute for Voices of Liberty, Emily Schrader, and Benham Ben Taleblu, research fellow specializing in Iran for the Foundation of Defense of Democracies. Thank you both for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Pleasure.
So, Emily, let's start with you. You know, President Trump held a phone call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the Islamic Republic of Iran was at the top of the agenda. How aligned are the U.S. and Israeli governments on this issue? And is there a concern that the U.S. could spring a surprise deal on Israel?
Well, I think that's always been a concern. As soon as it was announced that Trump was going to be holding talks with the Islamic Republic of Iran, the agendas aren't completely aligned. We've repeatedly seen Trump sort of waffle back and forth, at least initially, before confirming ultimately that under no circumstances would there be enrichment allowed, both through Witkoff himself, who stated that, and also multiple Trump officials from Secretary of State Rubio to the president himself. Since then, we've seen a very strong message of that, one that was reiterated in the story that you just ran. That being said, Trump is also very, very adamant about trying to make a deal. And it's very important at this point that a deal isn't made that is reminiscent of the JCPOA, which of course Trump withdrew from during his first term. And that is actually what the Islamic Republic is trying to get through right now, a 3.67 enrichment in their nuclear proliferation. That's something, of course, that the U.S. and Israel should absolutely not allow.
Mm-hmm. And Benham, turning to you, the negotiations have been dragging on for quite some time now. And yesterday, following the call, President Trump called the Iranians great negotiators, almost sounded like praise. The president has repeatedly stated that he prefers a diplomatic deal, as Emily just mentioned, but a military option remains on the table. But the Iranians seem to be holding their ground despite the threats, despite Trump's comments. The regime is the weakest it's ever been. So how could they afford to reject this U.S. proposal? I mean, do the Ayatollahs believe Trump is simply bluffing?
Well, it's important to connect a few dots here. Weak doesn't mean not lethal. Weak doesn't mean not dangerous. The Islamic Republic of Iran is still home to the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East, the largest drone arsenal in the Middle East. It's the only country producing this level of highly enriched uranium without having first produced nuclear weapons. It's the only country in the world to first produce a 2,000-kilometer ballistic missile at home without first producing nuclear weapons. So there's everything and a whole host of reasons that makes the Islamic Republic exceptionally dangerous despite its weak social, economic, political, regional, environmental, what have you, position. Now, what they are counting on, actually, is President Trump's rhetoric and the overall post-Bush administration U.S. desire to do less in the Middle East, not more, as basically functioning as a human shield between them and a potential preemptive Israeli military attack. Make no mistake, Iran is engaging now, but they're not engaging in good faith. They're engaging to buy time. They're engaging to basically have snapback expire, which could happen by October of this year. They're engaging to put distance between America and its most important ally in the Middle East, which is Israel. And they're engaging ultimately to downplay the increasingly hawkish position we've seen from the Europeans over the past few years because of warming Iran-Russia ties. So they're doing all of these things to buy time, put distance, and to isolate America. So this is very much a return to the normal divide and conquer diplomatic strategy we've seen from the Islamic Republic when its back has been against the wall.
Mm-hmm. And Emily, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. I mean, how can the Iranian regime really afford to stand up to the United States of America, the great United States of America? I mean, what game are they playing at? And given the current climate in the Trump administration, as Benham mentioned, the America First vision, how likely is it that the U.S. would actually strike Iran?
Well, I mean, I think that remains to be seen. We're going to have to see how it plays out with the nuclear talks and what the response is from the Islamic Republic if they actually are able to make some kind of a deal, whether or not it's to Israel's liking. But I actually agree in full with what Benham said about the situation with the Islamic Republic. It's very clear that what they're doing when it comes to these negotiations is buying time. Their interest is trying to strengthen their position within the region in order to achieve sanction relief, and in order to continue their, frankly, genocidal agenda for the state of Israel, ultimately the United States as well, and of course destabilization efforts throughout the region that we see them backing the Houthis. We've already seen them investing in potential future proxy terror groups in Sudan. There's been a lot of activity on that front, and I think the absolute worst step that could happen is going soft on the Islamic Republic right now. What really needs to happen and what really is going to bring about an actual change in the region ultimately is only going to come with regime change. Now, hopefully that isn't something that has to happen through a war. This is something the majority of the Iranian people really, really want to achieve, regardless of the nuclear issue. But we're not going to see a significant change in the region and in the activities of the Islamic Republic through a deal, even if a nuclear deal is made.
Mm-hmm. And Benham, what kind of a time frame are we looking at? I mean, how long can these negotiations continue to drag out? The U.S. has already given a proposal. Iran is expected to give its counter proposal. I mean, how much longer are we looking at?
Well, if you ask me, it's already gone on too long. I think there's certainly ample predicate for the president to push away from the table here. But make no mistake, I think that's what the Iranians are trying to force the U.S. to do. The Iranians have this narrative, despite the Islamic Republic of Iran being the least good faith or the most bad faith actor here, they're trying to say Trump left the deal in 2018. They're trying to do things to wear out Trump's patience, potentially have him leave the table again, maybe have this be the casus belli for them to go for the potential atomic weapon. We don't know. But one thing is clear. is that this largely needs to be a political issue, not a technical issue. The reason the Iranians are able to drag it on so long is because they're not meeting the one political red line set by the Trump administration, which is no enrichment and full dismantlement. What the Iranians are trying to do is find multiple technical ways to water down that political position. And if the president or the Trump administration or even the West really gives Tehran the time, these kind of talks can go on for years because Tehran will continue to try to find a way to square peg and round hole Washington into agreeing something that is not conform with its own political red lines. And let me just say here, yes, the Iranians have said for many, many years that they would never stop enriching and that they've never dismantled. But the supplicant does not get to dictate red lines to the superpower here. So even looking at this issue of the timeline and the red lines from an America First agenda, caving into Tehran's demands and playing to their timeline simply makes zero sense.
Mm-hmm. And Emily, if the Trump administration does eventually reach a deal, maybe it does secure an end to uranium enrichment. Does this truly minimize the Iranian threat? What about, as you mentioned, its funding of terrorism, its drone and ballistic missile productions, and so on?
Well, I think this is the problem and why there are many Iranian dissidents who have been quite critical of the fact there are negotiations in the first place. Obviously, as an Israeli, first and foremost, Israel's interest is in ensuring that there is no nuclear weapon, also from the perspective of the United States. But that doesn't actually solve the problem because the IRGC activities, the ballistic missiles, as Behnam mentioned, all of these activities that the regime has been doing for decades since the Islamic Revolution in '79 is something that isn't being addressed at all by a nuclear deal. At least that's not what's on the table right now. And if we're actually going to curb the terrorist activities of the Islamic regime throughout the region, not just Israel, but throughout the region, then that also has to be addressed. Now, is that something that would be addressed in a nuclear deal? Probably not, as it seems so far, but it's definitely something that needs to be dealt with at some point sooner or later.
Mm-hmm. And Behnam, I want to ask one final question. Why is the Trump administration so hesitant towards striking Iran and towards regime change in Iran?
Well, as you know, where I work and live and sit in Washington, D.C., the RC word is perhaps the ultimate no-no word. It's the ultimate nasty word, and that's largely the hangover of the Bush administration. Whether you look at the Obama administration, the Trump administration, or the Biden administration, every U.S. candidate for a higher office, particularly with a focus on foreign policy, has been able to get more votes by promising to do less in the Middle East, not more. Again, that is largely because of the botched experience and the hangover of 2003 Iraq. Obviously, as Emily and you and your viewers know, standing with the Iranian people, both in principle and in practice, need not at all look like the disaster that was Iraq pre or post 2003. But the problem is that that large political framing has taken both sides of the aisle, the left and the right here, where I work in Washington, hostage. And so long as America is hostage to this nightmare, it can never really wake up to actually deal with the root of the many fires of the Middle East, which is the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
All right, Emily, Behnam, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Israeli-Hamas war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Israel Bonds pledges to ensure Israel thrives and flourishes. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
And moving on, red alert sirens sounded in the Gaza periphery today near Zikim Beach. The IDF confirmed it intercepted a rocket launched from Gaza. No injuries were reported. It's day 613 of the war, and Operation Gideon's Chariots continues to advance while making efforts to minimize civilian casualties. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The IDF pressed on with its renewed Gaza offensive. The army announced the demolition of a 1.5-kilometer-long tunnel in Khan Yunis. Paratroopers and combat engineers located and demolished the tunnel used as a hideout by Hamas operatives with weapons recovered before demolition. Troops destroyed dozens of booby-trap buildings, including some with 5-ton explosives. Ground forces killed at least 10 Hamas gunmen in Khan Yunis in the past day. In northern Gaza, an airstrike was directed against a cell of 5 operatives. Dozens of targets, including tunnels, were hit in airstrikes over the past 24 hours. The army is continuing efforts to minimize civilian casualties, but stressed that Hamas uses Gazan civilians as human shields, fighting from civilian areas, including homes, hospitals, schools, and mosques. The U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is continuing efforts to distribute aid, but not without incident. It was once again forced to close one of its aid distribution sites due to what it called chaos. The GHF opened 3 distribution points, but was forced to close one after a deadly incident. According to reports, the local militia, led by Yasser Abu Shahab, was trying to organize the crowds into lines on the road. When people pushed forward, the gunmen opened fire. During rioting, the militiamen withdrew, and the aid center was ordered closed.
And the family of hostage and soldier Matan Angrest approved the full publication of their son being kidnapped on October 7th. The gruesome and shocking video shows the soldier being torn from his tank and thrown into a mob of people while he was defending the border that day. His family's decision, all while talks for a hostage and ceasefire deal remain deadlocked. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian reports.
There is no escaping the reality of October 7th, and no matter how many months go by, newly published video causes chills, a reminder of how grotesque and horrifying the massacre really was 20 months ago. The family of Israeli soldier Matan Angrest now allowed for the full publication of the video of their son's abduction, which shows the then 20-year-old unconscious and pulled from his tank near Nahal Oz and thrown into a mob of dozens of people who continue to beat him surrounding the burning tank. Nearly all of the people participating in his abduction and assault are in plain clothes rather than Hamas-style military attire. His family also authorized the release of audio from inside the tank that illustrates the anxious moments leading up to the deadly ambush, which reportedly killed both American-Israeli soldier Itai Chen and soldier Daniel Peretz. The bodies of Chen and Peretz were dragged into Gaza by terrorists, according to the IDF. Meanwhile, Angrest survived the horrific assault. Former hostages who were held with Angrest say he was electrocuted with car batteries until he lost consciousness after he was abducted and has undergone violent and intense interrogations. Hamas has released 2 videos of Angrest since he was kidnapped after the now 22-year-old miraculously survived the October 7th onslaught, but is now suffering from chronic asthma and severe respiratory distress from his time in captivity. The release of the video by his family comes on the backdrop of deadlocked talks for a ceasefire and a hostage deal after Hamas released its comments to mediators regarding U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff's proposal, which Witkoff said were, quote, unacceptable. Witkoff told families he believed a breakthrough could happen before the holiday of Eid, but recent false hope has continued to play with the hearts of dozens of families still waiting for their loved ones to come back home.
And activists from the so-called Gaza Freedom Flotilla, better known as the Selfie Yacht, were taken to Ben Gurion Airport for deportation from Israel. But once there, only 4, including Greta Thunberg, agreed to leave, while the other 8 activists are refusing. ILTV Steve Leibovitz has the latest.
High-profile activist Greta Thunberg was placed on a plane and deported to Sweden. 4 of the activists, including Thunberg, left Israel voluntarily. The 8 others refused to leave and were taken to Givon detention facility. The deportation move against high-profile Thunberg and pro-Palestinian comrades took place only a day after their small aid ship was stopped by the Navy and taken to Ashdod, where they remained in custody overnight. Those who refused to sign deportation documents to willingly leave Israel will be brought to a judicial authority to authorize their deportations. Consuls from the activists' home countries met them at the airport. The yacht Marlin docked at Ashdod port nearly 24 hours after being intercepted by Israeli Navy commandos. This after they ignored orders to change course away from the Gaza coastline. Thunberg and the 11 other activists set sail from Sicily on June 1st. Defense Minister Katz said this about the decision to seize the yacht and passengers, which the Israeli Foreign Ministry called a selfie yacht.
הנחיתי את צה"ל להקרין בפני נושא המשט את סרטון הזוועות של טבח השביעי באוקטובר כאשר יגיעו לנמל אשדוד. ראוי שגרטה האנטישמית וחבריה, תומכי החמאס, יראו בדיוק מיהו ארגון הטרור חמאס, שבו באו לתמוך ולמענו הם פועלים, מהם מעשי הזוועה שביצעו בנשים, זקנים וילדים, ומול מי ישראל נלחמת להגנתה.
U.S. President Trump weighed in on his thoughts about Greta Thunberg's action.
Do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class.
Do you
That's
think
my primary recommendation for her.
Was she kidnapped by Israel, as she says? Was she kidnapped?
I find it. I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
And in Brussels, Belgium pro-Palestinian activists dressed up as Hamas terrorists and reenacted the October 7th massacre. This shocking event took place as part of the Samidoun organized annual resistance festival. Samidoun is a group that is recognized as a terrorist organization by the United States and Canada. Videos from the event circulated on social media show masked men wearing keffiyehs pointing fake guns, while others pretended to be dead bodies on the floor. The festival goers cheered when all the people were dead. Israel's ambassador to Belgium posted about the festival, saying she couldn't believe it's real and asked, how can this be Belgium? The organizers wrote on their website that the festival would be a space of support for all liberation struggles facing the empire in all its forms. Among the other activities of this festival included the School of Revolution, which the organizers said brings together collectives across Brussels resisting police violence and state repression, organizing against fascism, struggling against the targeting of migrants, and building solidarity with Palestine. And a report on how the global religious landscape changed from 2010 to 2020, released by the Pew Research Center. The Jewish global population was estimated to have grown by nearly 1 million people in the last decade. ILTV's Devo Klein breaks down this report for us.
Yesterday, the Pew Research Center released their Religious Landscape Report, concentrating data that focuses on population growth from the last decade, with an emphasis on religious affiliation and identification. The report confirmed that the fastest growing religious group are Muslims, while Christians remain the world's biggest religious group. So what about the Jewish community? The report confirms that the Jewish population has grown by nearly 1 million people, making the current estimate of Jews around the world at 14.8 million people. In percentage terms, Jews were the smallest group in the study, representing about 0.2% of the world's population. And the research notes that this number of 14.8 million is still less than the Jewish population count before the Holocaust in 1939, when the Jewish population stood at 16.6 million. The research also notes that the change in growth is not evenly distributed. The growth of Islam worldwide is largely concentrated in North America, while the Jewish growth in North America is much smaller. The reported Jewish population growth is concentrated mostly in Israel, the home of the Jewish people. These numbers help highlight the very reason for the existence of the State of Israel, the only home for the Jewish people.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see sunny skies alongside hot temperatures with highs of 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.